Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Not specifically epic mounts or whales or anything like that. No, I'm going to talk about different ideas for your strongholds, your home bases in Dungeons and Dragons. Wow, now this is the actual ideas video. This is the one where I just dump everything in my brain and everything I could possibly find and then just vomit it out onto you. And you decide what you like and what you don't like. So here are about 20 plus ideas for a Dungeons and Dragons stronghold or home base for your game group. You heard me right. I'm not doing 5, not doing 10, not doing 15, not doing 20. I'm doing more than 20 different ideas that you can take and use in your game. So the types of Dungeons and Dragons strongholds I have broken up into sort of groups. And as I work my way through this video, you will notice that the level of imagination or just peculiarity will increase. I'm starting kind of with the tame stuff and working into the more out there on the edge stuff for those of you who want out there on the edge. So starting off with number 1. A castle surrounded by a moat, sitting on a mountain top or a cliff face by the sea. Or why not have it floating in the clouds that can fly? This is really, you could take all those ideas and include all of them into the same castle, or take just one or two of those ideas and decide that that's good enough for your current castle, home base or stronghold. It really doesn't matter exactly how you lay that out. I would say to you that these are just ways of, one, giving the players a way of, one, capturing a location. Once they've captured the location, it's now their opportunity to decide, do we want to keep it? We've cleared out the monsters, we've cleared out all the villains, do we want to keep this location? Okay, number 2 would be an impenetrable granite mountain fortress populated by rock monsters with spikes and a defensive magical force shield. And I think that it would be quite sensible to have yourself an animated sphinx set in the front of it, just to scare people off with glowing eyes. That never works well for anybody, correct? Number 3, an 800-foot tall statue that steps over castle ramparts and smashes through those stone fortress walls so that you can get to the villain and crush the life out of them. Why not? I kind of took this idea very much from Ghostbusters, where they decide to animate the Statue of Liberty, and also from Chris Perkins and his use of the statues of, I believe it's Waterdeep, has a whole lot of very large statues that can sort of walk around and move if you want to. Number 4, a flying ship or balloon, I've used this many times, powered by an air elemental or some other device or magic that travels faster than light and possibly functions like a time machine. I know the idea of including time travel in a fantasy game scares the bejesus out of a lot of players. Not so much, but the Dungeon Master much more. It should scare players, because I've done it to players and they've realised the ramifications and the mistake of actually doing that. I know for Dungeon Masters it's very, very scary, but it's really, really cool. And certainly at higher levels of play, it allows them to rectify all the problems they may have created as they were exploring, adventuring, and doing whatever else they are up to. A ship. So number 5 would be a sailing ship or a pirate ship crewed by a magical talking ocean creature or ocean creatures. Or why not just go with the Black Pearl idea and have an undead crew or sailors that can navigate the seas and oceans. It's relatively basic. We always sort of get drawn to the idea of being on an old pirate ship, a galleon of some kind. And of course you can see in the distance there's that castle stronghold with the skull face, which is quite common. You've got to have a skull on your ship and you've got to have a skull on your home base, right? So number 6, we're starting to get into the really weird stuff. What about a glass and seashell submarine? Or you can go with a mechanical whale. But in any case, I think it would be cool if it's powered by a water elemental. Water elementals are essentially just energy revolving around that element, so why not have it trapped in the submarine or the mechanical whale? Number 7 is an underwater castle, palace, town, a city with a dome that hides magical water-based technology created by sea elves. Eat your heart out, Atlantis. Really, this is a lot of stuff that we've seen before. If you've watched the movie The Deep, you will sort of understand that there's lots of different things. The Man from Atlantis is a very good example of the sorts of things that we sort of would be trying to pull out, where you have a series of locations that are underwater that you can use and explore or have as a hideout or a stronghold. And of course, then you've got to build in the idea of some sort of race that can actually function underneath the water if you want to sort of continue playing in a game or campaign like that. Number 8 is the Wizard Tower, full of libraries, workshops, protected by ancient elven magical runes and beasts. And of course, if it's floating, which of course you want to have a floating wizard tower, not just your standard wizard tower standing on a mountain top or anywhere else. The only way to get there is with a flying mount. Magical beasts, dragons, griffins, hippogriffs, that sort of thing, makes for a lot of fun, particularly since your players will constantly be hounding you and saying at higher levels, we would like giant eagles. And we don't want anything but giant eagles, because giant eagles fix everything. I've had that one played on me more than a few times. Number 9 is the volcanic black rock stronghold, housing a gigantic dwarven forge with a river of lava built into the belly of a volcano, where once there lived a villain, and that was his lair until somebody came along, dropped him into the lava and decided to keep his home. I wonder who did that. Number 10 is join a famous guild hall or make your own guild hall to perfect your skills while training with fabulous facilities and forming networks with powerful individuals in the society around you. A guild hall is really useful for a rogue and other sort of classes and characters that are trying to sort of work for an organisation. They may have a profession of some kind, so a guild hall works very nicely in that case. Number 11 is a haunted mansion with hundreds of rooms full of ghosts, animated talking furniture, and pot plants in an enchanted forest that disappears into a magical fog. Does sort of sound very Disney, doesn't it? But I haven't selected a Disney image. But I thought the idea behind it was quite interesting, and it's certainly very fantastical. And the last thing you want to do is sort of take away the opportunity for your players to talk to the dead or their furniture or pot plants. Why not allow them that opportunity? Number 12, a spectacular crystal secret cave behind a rainbow-coloured waterfall with a magical camouflaged entrance and quartz statues to the gods. I'm sure a few of you have already noticed the image and figured out exactly where I pulled it from, and yes, I am borrowing heavily from Superman, but we won't say any more than that. Number 13, a steam-powered mechanical walking mansion that eats trees for fuel, spits out iron cannonballs, and has a bad temper. Or if you don't particularly like the idea of steampunk or steam-powered anything or steam mechanically stuff, well, then just go with the standard walking house with chicken legs. Number 14, a magnetic stone temple that heals the sick in the shape of a sun god driving a chariot being pulled by 16 horses that floats in the air with a vault door that can't be opened. There's nothing worse than including something that has a vault door that the players can't open. And of course, you don't necessarily have to have any opportunity to ever open that door. It will drive them bonkers. Number 15. A lighthouse with internal doors to different dimensional worlds that floats on a shattered earth motte and shines light through the veil of time, space, and magical illusions. Why do we want something like this? I was actually thinking when I came up with that idea, I'd done a video on this particular topic, which was the Arcane Lighthouse. I was thinking very much of Doctor Who's TARDIS. And then I also remember running a tower, a wizard's tower, where they could not find a way into the tower itself. There was no obvious front door to it. They had to find the door because it's hidden and disguised with magic and illusions. Once they got in, they found that by going up the tower, and in this case the lighthouse, there were a series of doors that would lead them to places they could never normally get to. And I found that hugely entertaining, and so did my players. So I think it's worth having a go. Number 16, a massive Fey home tree with an elaborate series of tree houses populated by pixies and built by elves or just giant stick insects. We always like the idea of having a tree house, but why not go with, essentially you're taking the idea of Avatar to the extreme. And there's been plenty of tree houses or magical tree houses, or you think about all of the Disney stuff that's been put out in terms of Tinkerbell, there's a lot of tree houses. And of course, Robinson Crusoe, Tarzan, all that sort of stuff. Number 17. This is probably my favourite and open to potentially numerous stories and ideas and a history, and that is a tropical island stronghold or castle held up by gigantic statues formed or in the image of gods, that is home to the Pegasus or Pegasi, and is also the home of the stable to the gods. So why would you put the stables up high? Well, because you don't want anybody just going and taking or capturing or killing your flying horses, which of course is what is a Pegasus. Now, the statues themselves could also have built within them living quarters and structures, not just be solid in form if you wanted to. But it also makes it very difficult to get to. And one of the important aspects of any kind of stronghold is making getting access to it very difficult. So the only way to get there is either to be really good at climbing and have a climber's kit, or to be able to fly. So that sort of keeps most of the riffraff out. Number 18, a tavern or an inn with a crude or rude name, because of course every tavern or inn should have a crude or rude name, featuring a well to Undermountain where characters can run a business and get falling down drunk every night. Gosh, I think I kind of stole that one from somewhere. Isn't that the Yawning Portal? And of course that well leading to Undermountain leads to treasures and monsters, and there's always an opportunity to make a buck off all of the poor souls that get lost down there as they try to make their wealth. Number 19, a pyramid isolated in the mountains, surrounded by a magical maze. What's the worst thing you could possibly put in a game? A magical maze, and cloaked in illusions that collects solar energy to bring the dead back to life. Could be useful for players. Certainly it gives a benefit for those individuals who are unable to be raised from the dead. And of course, if you bring them back here, you can bring them back to life. Let's hope they don't come back as zombies rather than just raised from the dead like we would prefer them to be. Also remember, the concepts behind something like a pyramid can also reflect not just a capacitor that stores energy and does something, functions like some sort of super weapon, but also a location or beacon to allow for flying crafts to land, particularly if you have a flat section on it. If you don't want to have a flat section, just make sure you have a hole in the ship that's going to land, so it doesn't wind up with its own asshole. Essentially, yes. Okay, number 20. The remains of a colossal god skull, or the skull of a god, or the remains of a god's body that forms the foundation to a magical stronghold created by necromancers and, of course, liches to bring about the destruction of the multiverse. Certainly this is going to have some sort of castle structure on it, but just the whole demeanour of it makes it look really cool. But the other thing behind it is this is an opportunity for your players to do something completely stupid, like conduct the ritual that will bring about the disaster that it was intended for. Okay, number 21. A museum full of the characters' ill-gotten gains, such as artifacts, weapons, armour, which don't need to be magical, but they could be magical, all the books they've collected, preserved monsters that they may have stuffed or used various other things to keep them intact, and wondrous items, even the most bizarre things they didn't really know what to do with. I really like this idea as a museum is sort of like a place where you can dump all the stuff that the players didn't really know what to do with, but nobody really wanted to buy, and the dungeon master wasn't going to let them sell it off because it really wasn't worth it, or it was worth far too much and there was nobody who had enough money to buy it off them. Number 22. A zoo. Now this could be a cage to display all of the exotic creatures and monsters and beasts that the party have captured. Not killed, but captured. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a series of cages. It might be a series of caravans that are built like cages, or it might even be a reserve. So a zoo, when I think zoo, I think cage and bars, but I also think isolated location where essentially we're talking about Jurassic Park essentially. But you don't have to have dinosaurs on there. You could have pretty much anything you wanted on there if you wanted. Number 23. Going with the sort of museum zoo idea, let's go with the teleporting circus tent that you never need to assemble and put up or dismantle because you don't need to worry about doing that. It has a extra dimensional space inside, essentially allowing it to hold more inside than appears from the outside. We're going with the concept of the TARDIS, extra dimensional space, and of course borrowing very heavily from Harry Potter. Now you could do this with a circus tent, you could do it with a castle, you could do it with a house, you could even do it with a shanty if you wanted to, or a fortress. Lots of different possibilities in terms of extra dimensional spaces and teleporting strongholds. Number 24, a gigantic turtle whose shell functions as a mobile island home, built from the shipwrecks that have been found, a fisherman's shanty, a windmill, a greenhouse, and has a small fishing boat in tow. Of course, you want to have a few trees because occasionally you might get hungry and want a coconut, but I thought this was quite fun. And for those of you who are wondering, why would you have a water wheel on the side? Well, maybe that's to actually generate power as the turtle swims around so that you can power the various items in your shanty or on your home base. This is one of my favourite ideas. Out of all of them, I love the idea of the turtle. Number 25, a caravan made from enormous seed pods, Fred, seed pods, with multiple levels that can roll across the desert outlands. Do I have to really say anything more than that? When it came to a caravan, I didn't really want to have your standard caravan, and I felt like this image reflects the unusual nature of the types of flora and fauna you could find in a fantasy world. So a seed pod seemed like a good idea. Number 26, and the last one, and certainly I think almost my favourite out of the whole lot, and that is a massive snail. Yes, that's a snail home that is charged with cosmic power that can create dimensional portals to different worlds and go really fast. for those of you who remember the Never-Ending Story, there was a racing snail in there, and I really liked that particular character. I thought that was fantastic. So when I found this image, I thought, this reminds me of that, the Never-Ending Story. It also reminds me of the pink snail from Dr. Dolittle. I'm talking about the original Dr. Dolittle that was made many years ago, not Downey Jr.'s version where he decides to have basically stick his hand up a dragon's butt. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. Those are the ideas that sort of spawned this. This means you can have living quarters within the shell without affecting the creature itself. And I thought the idea of having a massive snail, which of course would present itself as being a big target, you would want that snail to do the absolute opposite to a normal snail, which is travel very fast and travel between dimensions. Just a lot of fun, in my opinion. I'm hoping that you found something out of this useful. Feel free to tell me what ideas you liked the most, because I am interested in what you have to say. So put that down in the comments by all means. Now, if you are interested in some of my other content, I have another video on how to build a home base for your Dungeons and Dragons group, and you're welcome to go and check out that video. I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters. I have a series of videos for the Lost Mine of Phandelver, the Curse of Strahd, and the Dragon of Icespire Peak, if you are interested. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing stuff like this, you can check me out on Patreon, where you can get stuff, basically the stuff that I present in written form, and all the live streams, so you don't have to worry about being notified and clicking bell buttons and stuff like that. You don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff then. Also too, I have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. I have a merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos if you want some merch. Otherwise, you just keep watching my videos, because I run ads on my videos and I get paid for the ads you watch. So feel free to keep just doing that. Otherwise, make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.